listening to the Pasco Podcast with Mike Carballa. Welcome to Season 3 of Pasco Podcast, a series about leadership and public service. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the nearly 600,000 people of Pasco County, as represented by the Board of County Commissioners. It's through their trust and empowerment of our workforce and leadership team that we're able to bring you this podcast. This podcast is designed to help public servants build leadership skills and leverage them for success by sharing the experiences of our peers.
Hi, I'm Mike Carballa, and welcome to our 39th episode of Pasco Podcast. Today, we're following the money. And while the services we provide are primarily paid for through local taxes, we also work very, very hard to secure state and federal funding for Pasco County citizens. And we just recently added a special position on our team to help secure even more grant funding for our communities. Joining us today to talk more about how all of this works and why it matters so much is Intergovernmental Affairs Officer Ralph Lair and our new grants manager, Dr. Chalonda Smith. So Chalonda and Ralph, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Why don't we just start a little bit and just tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you came here to Pasco County. So Dr. Smith, let's start with you.
I'll take the grant route.
Go.
So my first grant I wrote in 1997. It was for teen moms, residential. With that, I ended up working with a lot of senators, congressmen, writing grants for them, start working for the state, writing policies and grants. And then I became the chief strategy officer for local government, where I was responsible for strategic planning, grants management, and policy writing.
Okay.
With that, I found this job and I was like, you know what? I love the fact of building a grants team. I love the fact of finding money for local government. So this is why I'm here for Pasco County.
Well, that's fantastic, and we're happy to have you here. And I tell you, you've jumped right out of the gate.
Yes.
We just had a great talk a few weeks ago on your observations, what you've seen, and a lot of great opportunities here for the county. So I know our board and our citizens are really going to love reaping the fruits of your labors, and the teams for that matter. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Ralph, you're no stranger to the intergovernmental world. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here?
So with my background, I came from the legislative process, Florida legislature. I have 20 plus years at the Florida legislature in the House of Representatives, never served with any of the Florida senators. So I worked with four representatives in the House. One was the Speaker Pro Tem, and my last member was a Speaker of the House, Will Weatherford. After leaving there, I did a stint at Public Service Commission, and I also worked at the Water Management District, Swiftmont. So
very good.
It started with the county in 2014,
nice.
And just enjoyed it. It was a perfect fit. All the years in the legislature helping the county. Born and raised in the area, so it just was a perfect fit for me.
Ah, fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you here, and it's been great working with you, especially through this session. Been one of the little more I don't want to say tumultuous, but it's definitely had some ups and downs and a little challenging on that. But that's how the process works sometimes. Indeed. So Ralph, it's just wrapping up. We're just wrapping up now, or getting close to wrapping up the legislative session. I know we're past the halfway point. When it comes to appropriations and things like that, that's usually what a lot of people think of when it comes. Obviously, there's laws that can affect it, but when it comes to appropriations, and it's kind of the focus on that. Walk us through that process a little bit and how all that comes to be.
I always like to tell people when we're talking about the legislative process and the appropriations process, the one thing that the legislature is required to do by law is pass a budget.
That's correct. That's their only charge, right?
That's exactly right. Everything else is just other.
And they have what? They've got what? 60 days to do it?
Exactly. 60 days. So. And we meet, yearly, and they are to get a budget done. And then what you end up with is 1,000 plus bills addressing issues that kind of take up most of that time. So as you said, we've gone over the halfway point. We're coming up on the 50-day, which the 50th day rule, they have to stop hearing bills in committee. We should be going into the conference to align their budgets. Right now, the House and the Senate are separated on their budgets.
Okay.
And they go into a conference and they try to work out those differences and finally have that final bill that they vote on in the House and the Senate goes to the governor, where the governor then has the veto power, line item veto power on the budget, and could remove some items that may have been placed in the budget.
Gotcha. So it's sometimes it's not enough to go through the process necessarily. Just to get things into the budget is a pretty heavy lift.
Correct.
And then get it through and then taken care of. And here in Pasco, we start even earlier than that, right? I mean, a lot of the asks that we had to bring back to the community, a lot of sidewalk projects and some road and transportation type projects. We started looking at these back in August maybe, when we had our initial. Okay. So you got to take that through and work that with our legislative delegation, which has been fantastic to work with. I mean, those folks are working very, very hard for the county, and it's God bless them. It's yeoman's work. I will certainly say that. Chalonda, for the first time, we now have a special grants division, right?
Yes.
Up until now, Pasco has always gone after grants, and we've captured grants and appropriations, and we've brought them back. But we're trying to streamline that process and kind of bring it under a little more of a different management technique. Why is that important to you? Why do you think that's so important for the grant process?
It's important because of compliance.
Okay.
I think sometimes I say the misconception is that people, particularly local government, they get grants, they spend the money, and they close it out.
Yeah.
And there's so much between that time frame. So I always talk about the life cycle of the grant.
Okay.
Pre-award, finding the grants, researching the grants, applying for the grants. And then you have the award process, which you receive the money. There's a grant agreement in which we need to comply with, make sure that we're doing the reporting, all of the impact, and then there's the post-award, which is the closeout. Ensuring that we do all of that says that we're good stewards of our money. But when we just go ahead and move forward with providing we close out the money, we're not really good stewards in that space, because we're not sure if we've made an impact on the community. We're not sure if we've been compliant with any type of reporting or audits. So it's very important that local government, particularly those departments that are providing services, understand the life cycle of the grant.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. There's I always tell people that, grants are good,
yes,
but there are oftentimes some strings, right?
Yes.
Because the reason grants come out is you're doing something that aligns with, and by you I mean like a department
Absolutely.
is doing something that aligns with some sort of policy objective of whoever the granting agency is. And
Right.
so when those interests align, it's fantastic, right?
It is.
But there's still the accountability measure, because we're still talking taxpayer dollars
Sure.
at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So there's got to be that accountability step. Any pitfalls that you've kind of seen with folks?
Pitfalls, I wouldn't say pitfalls, but
Okay.
challenges.
Sure.
Just operating in silo,
Okay.
not really sure, sharing the information. There's lack of collaboration, really trying to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. I say follow, what I'm looking forward is the strategic plan that the commissioners approve. Once they do that, making sure that the departments understand their role in that space and finding strategic funding plans to support the role of the strategic plan with the commissioners.
Yeah, and I think that helps kind of align the objectives, and that's why it's so important to get that
Absolutely.
strategic plan laid out, and then we align that with our funding and grant opportunities, and I think having that a little more of a central site picture on that,
Yes.
and this office being within our Office of Management and Budget, which is where you reside.
Yes.
Very important this time of year. I think that's helpful, and to your point, helping the department comply. That's not really what they do all the time, right? I mean, if I'm I'll take my background. I'm from utilities. We do water, wastewater type work. But then what are all these I's I got to dot and these T's I got to cross? And,
Absolutely.
maintain a schedule, or I got to report back. What do you mean I didn't close that out right? There are some accountability steps that they may not necessarily be familiar with.
Correct.
And so being able to help and do that is fantastic. So, we've got an appropriation side, we've got a grant side. I mean, how, you've been here a short period of time, you've been here a while. How do your offices collaborate, or what's the thought process going forward on that?
You want to go?
No, go ahead.
Well, it's funny because Ralph and we went to NACO 2 weeks ago, and we, that first time really collaborating together, but we were able to hear, two of the commissioners went with us, we were able to sit down and hear what their ask and priorities are. We were able to meet with senators in Congress or their aides to talk about small briefings, talk about what the need and the ask is. And one of the things that I shared with Ralph is like, you know what? Maybe once we get the strategic plan, then I'll look at what the senators and the Congress priorities are, make sure they line up, and then you and I meet to make sure that we start requesting appropriations or earmarks for that. So we've been going back and forth. We had our first meeting this morning.
Right. Okay, great.
And it was really good. And we're working on some different grants and making sure that we're getting some guidance in terms of, is it truly a good fit for Pasco? Are we really going to see a return on our investment with the impact of the community? So that's one of the things. You want to share anything else we've been working on?
No, that's perfect. You know what you said, it was good for us to do a regroup with our federal lobbyists and sit down and kind of go over the discussions that we had. I think going forward, you're going to see it work a lot better.
Yes.
And that's what I think is really good about this process. When I started in the Intergovernmental Affairs, it was just trying to get everybody in line and finding a place where we were just asking just to ask.
Correct.
For projects.
I call it a coupon chasing.
Right.
Correct. Right.
Or as I call it, the Jerry Maguire effect, just show me the money.
Right.
And so you just don't want that. You want to follow that strategic plan and your business plan and look what's already built into your plan and say, here's what we need to go for. And we kind of know where the commissioners lie with where they want to ask.
Right.
Infrastructure projects, water projects, types of items that you look at, but you want to do it thoughtfully. And I think now that we have a grants writer, because I was doing that as well, and looking for that, and you especially grants, especially our federal grants, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy for the department to put in, and there's not that many giveaways, if you will. There won't be too many projects awarded. We were discussing a really competitive one, the RAISE grant. It's an infrastructure DOT grant. They award one per state. And so 67 counties you're competing with, 400 plus, municipalities that may have a project in there. So you want to make sure it's a good project, strong and competitive project that you're applying for. So I'm just looking forward to it as this new department grows and we continue to grow in intergovernmental affairs, where it's the process is going to be so much greater, and we will see that in how we are rewarded with our county and the taxpayers.
Well, that's great. No, that's great. We talk a little bit about, we've talked a little bit about some of the process, right? So it's a lot more than just getting money, spending it, right? So you mentioned closeout. You mentioned there's a lot of other subtle nuances. Is there anything that maybe we want to add to that discussion that folks maybe need to be aware of? I think
training and knowledge. You know, one of the things that, I love to hear people always like, oh, we got a grant writer with the county, and we're so much more than just grant writing, right?
Right.
So this is my plug to say grants is so much more than just grant writing. I think one of the things that I would like to see is just educating departments, educating department heads and the commissioners as a whole, just what grants administration is and what it means to Pasco County to ensure that we're good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, as you said. So I think just education, providing some technical support in this whole life cycle of the grant is going to be important.
Yeah, that education piece is vital, right? I mean, we've had folks at public meetings come forward and talk about how there's billions and billions of dollars out there, and that they're not wrong. They're definitely not wrong. No. But when you do a deeper dive into things, and you have to be strategic about it. So I'm glad to hear you talk about that, because when you do a deeper dive, you go, oh, well, wait a minute. If I've got a yellow-tailed purple dolphin, right? Okay, then this applies. But I don't have any of those. So that's out. And you whittle it down until you kind of figure that out. And then on top of that too, the other thing that folks in departments also need to look at is that certain grants may entail some kind of cost benefit analysis on the department side, right? I'll give you a perfect example of one I'll have discussions with is certain certifications or certain things that have to go into an RFP, because if you got federal money or state money, we want to make sure that the people you hire meet certain standards, thresholds, and those standards and thresholds can add cost to projects too. So, you've got there is a balancing act that we have to think through. So I think those are some of the things that you can help educate departments on, help educate elected officials on. And the key here is to be strategic. And like you say, it's so much more than grant writing. I don't know. I gave you authorization to add what? We're adding a couple of positions.
Yeah,
there,
we
right?
got 3 positions coming up.
So this team is going there. And same at state level, Ralph. I mean, anything to add in terms of what the state adds in terms of their requirements and things? Yeah.
So I'll just do like a generic elementary way of understanding the budget process, both at the state level and the federal level. So much like the county puts together an annual budget, right? The state and the federal government does the same. So they hear from the departments, they hear from their agencies what their needs and asks are, and they start from that and build their budget from that. Mm-hmm. In Florida, we are lucky that the legislature allows the members to put in projects. They're called legislative budget requests, appropriations requests. You may hear them as pork. Earmarks,
sure,
however you want to refer to it as, but it's money that they bring back for specific projects in their community, in their district. And that's a great tool for them, and it's great for the local governments and the nonprofits back home, because it can help them. It's another way of finding or receiving money from the state that may not be a particular grant. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, when the money comes to you, you go into an agreement and it's set up like a grant, and you have requirements that you have to do as you spend that money. So the state does it, as I mentioned earlier. The one thing that they are charged to do is to get a budget done every year. Same with the feds. Federal is different in the sense.
Have they ever passed a budget? I can't remember. The last time they did that.
So what they end up doing there, and where they are currently at, as they continue to work out the new budget and negotiate, they do continuation resolutions to keep the government going, and that's where we're at. They got a deadline coming up. I believe it's March 8th, and then one at the end of the month, we'll probably see another continuation resolution be submitted just to keep that existing budget going. But don't get me wrong, they've already gone through some of the process and are planning their budget. They just have to negotiate and work it out. The federal government, we are lucky that the House members are able to put in community requests.
Yes, they
appropriations
are now, which
requests.
is great. They weren't always
doing that. They were about 10 years that they stopped. So about the past 3 to 4 years, they've done that. So we've been grateful there. The House does that. The Senate does not. But at the end of the day, once those projects go in, they reconcile, and they usually keep those in. So that's good. So that's a way of looking at the budget process and how it goes, both at the state and the federal level. Other than grants, I was also going to mention we do have, with our water management district, cooperative funding initiatives.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, that's a great thing where not all the water management districts have that.
Right.
No,
so the money that they bring in from the taxpayers, half of it goes back out for projects within their district. So that's been very helpful for us. So there's a lot of opportunities, at the end of the day, that we can get, and that's how the process works.
Yeah, and it's funny too. It's always you'd mentioned pork or these other and it's kind of it's a negative connotation that I really think is not deserved anymore. I mean, correct. I think you can kind of go back to the 80s when you start looking at some of those projects. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these projects are necessary projects, and the way you got to look at it is our citizens pay local taxes. They pay state taxes. They pay federal taxes too. And if you can leverage that taxation power to get a project here and there, I think there's a little bit of equity there in terms of how we're taxed, and we're able to leverage those other dollars to do things that we otherwise might not have been able to do, or we would have either had to have gone into debt to do, or it would have taken us years, and our citizens can start enjoying the benefits today of it.
That is correct.
So thank you for your efforts in that regards, because it's again, that is tough work out there. But you land a couple, and life is good,
Life
right?
is great.
so we're happy you're doing that. So I'd like to change tacks here a little bit and talk a little bit about leadership.
Okay.
Right. We do kind of have a recurring theme on this podcast where we do talk about leadership in local government. Talk to me a little bit about what that means to you, Chalonda.
So I'm a big fan of John Maxwell.
Okay.
So 360 Leader was one of my favorite books. And it just talks about leadership leading from where you are.
Okay.
So I would consider myself a servant leader. Okay. I'm one of those that will motivate, encourage, and support. So it's important to me because we're always looking at bringing someone, particularly with local government, bringing someone in and setting them up to be successful. So I don't know if you've seen my email and my tagline. Rosalind Carter talks about a great leader brings someone where they ought to be and not where they want to be. And in that, it's me, assessing them, seeing what their strengths are, what are some of their challenges, and really hone in on that and making them the best they can be when they come into Pasco County.
Fantastic. Ralph, what about you?
You said a servant leader. That's key for me. That I in my role and all the years that I've worked in government, I am a public servant. I knew what I was signing up for, and I enjoy helping the community, helping the citizens of Pasco County. And I've had the privilege of serving the citizens of Pasco County in my roles for 20 plus years now. 30 now.
Let's not start counting, guys.
Right.
Yeah, let's count. I want to do that. But yes, I think that's the type of people I look at and look up to. Right. I mentioned I work for a speaker. He definitely was younger than me. He was one of the youngest members in the as a speaker in the Florida House, Will Weatherford, and I really liked his leadership style. It wasn't about, I'm going to offer you this, and this. Let me become the speaker. What can I do to make you succeed? Absolutely. That's what my role will be as speaker. And I just have to applaud him for that because you don't see too many people doing that. Absolutely. And I think it's important that you build that team. You are the leader of the team, and you got to build that team up together, and we're all in this together. Yeah. So I just have always appreciated that servant leadership style, and making everyone succeed.
Yeah. You hit on it. You both hit on it, right? Yeah. Part of servant leadership is removing obstacles, barriers to success, and helping them be the best that they can be, right? That they're meant to be, and that is great. Chalonda, your passion is certainly people.
It is.
So why don't you talk to me a little bit about how that drives you?
That drives me because I used to be a therapist, licensed therapist. So I always...
We have a session after this, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
we
great.
really do.
Great. Thank goodness.
But I always want to see the good in everything, in any situation. So for me, whatever the challenge is for someone, it's always, how do we find the good in it? So I always want people to reach their full potential. So I'm always trying to figure out ways of how I can, kind of what Ralph just said, what can I do? It's always, what can I do to help you succeed in this space? And whatever I'm willing to give, I'm willing to share. Great. So people have always been my driving force in anything I do. I've been a servant leader. I love public service. Local government is new to me. Been in it for about 4 years, and it's been a driving force because I like to see the impact of a community grow.
Yeah, it's pretty
cool. And the quality of life. It is.
It's really cool.
It really is. So that's been my driving force thus far.
Wonderful. Well, we have great people, so we're glad you're here and doing a lot of good stuff. Ralph, and actually, Chalonda, same for you. Who's been the biggest influence on you as a leader?
And again, I'll go back to mentioning Will Weatherford.
Sure, okay.
Speaker Will Weatherford.
Yeah, great guy.
Like I said, he was the youngest, one of the youngest members to be elected as speaker. And I just, when he interacted with his members, I think that a lot of them were older. And I think when he put them at ease and said, I want to make you succeed, then they just opened up to him, and really he was able to lead in such a great way that I will always respect him for that.
Well, and it's great too, right? Because what you may lack, in your youth in terms of experience, right? You make up for it by allowing people to be the best that they can be, right?
Yeah.
We as leaders can't necessarily do the jobs of all the people that we're responsible for leading, but it is our job to empower them.
Right.
Again, be the best, make them the best they can
Absolutely.
be, because that's what we talk about when we're talking people, purpose, and performance, right?
Yes.
Right.
Again, connecting them to that purpose, and that performance takes care of itself. Biggest influence, Chalonda?
I would say right out of college, my very first supervisor,
Okay.
she was one that was a servant leader. She showed me the ropes. She made sure that I understood my role in the job. She provided knowledge. She introduced me to Maxwell and Covey way back then, and she's been a driving force. And, she said, hey, the only thing I want you to do is move it and share it with someone else. What I give you, pass it along.
Little
and that's
pay
what
it
I've been-
forward here,
Pay it
Shanna.
forward, and that's
Awesome.
what I've been doing.
That is fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
it's great that you're able to get that so early
Yes.
in your career, right? I mean, I've had great leaders. For the most part, for most of my career, I've been fortunate enough to do that. I've had some not so great ones,
Right.
but those experiences too were good and validating too on what we see on the other side. So what
What not
works.
to do.
Right. Well, absolutely. Any lessons or wisdom you'd like to share? Successes, challenges?
Successes, challenges, wisdom I would like to share. Again, I'm new to local government. 5 years in, I would say someone who is interested, really get a mentor to give you the ropes of, you talk about challenges, good supervisors, bad supervisors, but have a mentor and be always open for knowledge, understanding, growing, learning, whatever is out there. Be a sponge and soak it in, but always give it back, pay it forward.
Love it.
Thank you.
Ralph, how about that? Same thing.
For me, I think you're always learning and never stop learning. I think we should always remember that. The other one I think a lot of people have a hard time with is don't be afraid of self-criticism, or when people come in there and tell you they want to make sure you're improving, and you've got to take them from that and again learn from that, and don't see it as a negativity, see it as a positive. And the other one is laugh or you got to cry. I'm always going to be the humorous one. So, and that's just my nature.
Right.
And,
We
and I
love it.
always will be that person. But, and just different things, even if it's not work, I'll use this, taking care of my mother when she was ill. There
Right.
may be times, you'd want to cry, but don't. Just you got to laugh it off, and so you get through the day. It'll be fine.
Yeah. A little bit of humor goes a long way. Certainly does. Well, that's really it for the formal questions,
Okay.
guys. I've got a couple of extra little ones here. I don't know if you looked at it before.
We
or
have not. We were told not to.
I was 10 minutes late. I don't know. Integrity is one of our core values,
That's
folks.
right.
All right. So we'll only hit a few of them real quick,
Okay.
but just to get you guys a little bit better. Ralph, movie or book?
Movie or book? For me, I think it's going to be Cider House Rules.
Okay.
Both the book and the movie were great.
Book and the movie. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You don't have to give me a specific one. Just what do you prefer? Movie or book? Book.
Yes.
All right. Love it. Favorite holiday?
My birthday?
Love it. Now, do you
It's
have
a holiday.
Do you have a birthday?
It's Juneteenth.
Oh my God.
It's a holiday.
Very good.
It's my birthday.
So my son's birthday is also that. We joke. It's like, hey, now you got a holiday. Fantastic.
You thought I was joking.
No, that's awesome. All right. Ralph, favorite holiday?
For me, Christmas, and it's because that's the time my family's all spread out and we do get together.
Nice.
Wonderful. That's always great. Morning person or night owl, Ralph?
Morning.
I figured.
What if I say I'm between both?
I don't know. It depends what time you go to
I
bed.
get up early for the gym at 5.
All right.
And then I'll stay up late doing something till like 1. So it depends.
How do you function?
It's called coffee.
I mean, I do that too. I'm up at 5, but I tell you, I can't keep my eyes open past 9.
I'm a little of both.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Ralph. Oh, we already covered that. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, I like sorbets.
Ooh.
So mango sorbet, a raspberry sorbet. I love sorbets.
Nice. You can tell me gelato, Ralph. What are you going to do here?
I'm the guy that walks into the 200 flavors, and I always pick the same thing: chocolate.
Chocolate.
Really?
Hey, man. Tried and
safe.
true. Tried and true. Tell you what, Ralph. First job. What was your first job?
First job was Publix.
Bag boy.
Yes.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Chalonda?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
And I got a grant to go to school.
Okay, so
Yes.
so were you like Chick-fil-A like when it was only in the mall, Chick-fil-A?
I was only in the mall, Broward Mall, because I'm from Fort Lauderdale. So Broward Mall.
Right next to the Orange Julius, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I tell my kids they did this freestanding Chick-fil-A thing
It throws me off.
is a new thing,
Yes.
relatively speaking. So, all right, last question. How about summer or winter?
Summer.
Summer. Welcome to Florida.
Yes.
Ralph. Summer. Very good. I like summer too. Get to go out and do a lot of good stuff.
Yes.
So, listen, guys, I appreciate you joining us today here. It was just great to have this conversation on really an important topic. And I just want to say special thanks to our media relations team who also makes this effort possible. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Pasco Podcast. I'm Mike Carballa, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on Pasco County government, please visit mypasco.net and check us out on Facebook and Twitter.